Wanted to share my experience with getting sober. The other day I celebrated 10 years of sobriety. Big deal. 10 years for me, I never thought that was possible. There was parts of my life where I was resigned to the idea of that this is just the way it's going to be. And I never thought I was going to get sober, and I didn't expect to live that long, frankly. It was kind of a dark time, and the contrast between the way I was and who I am today is so extreme that I often forget what it was like. And so I wanted to share my experience, and if this helps one person out there or gives context to where I'm coming from and where I am today, that'll be good too. But I feel like I've lived 3 different lifetimes. Before getting sober, when I was really struggling the most, trying to get sober were the darkest times. And then, my post-sobriety life, which led to, YouTube and moving to Las Vegas and buying a house and getting married and all kinds of wonderful blessings. But before it got dark, it was actually pretty good also. I worked in the financial services industry. I was married. I had kids. And I was a daily drinker. And I was working in an industry where that was very common, and a lot of people did that. I remember the first day on the job, I worked in California, and stock market closed at 1, and so oftentimes there were wholesalers for various mutual funds or annuity companies, and they come to our office and take us to lunch, usually the nicest restaurant in the town. And I remember one of my coworkers there, drinking martinis. And I was like, wow, this is a great job. And that was something that happened quite a bit. It was a part of that industry, and people drank heavily, especially on business trips. But for me, it was a bit different. I drank every day, and I drank every day for the better part of 15 years. And largely, most of that was a good experience. I would say that, it wasn't like I got in trouble every time I was drinking, but every time I was in trouble, I had been drinking, that was for sure. But for me, it took a dark turn, after the collapse of the stock market in 2008, when everything kind of imploded. I think my drinking accelerated to just a much different pace, where, it became more of a necessity. Before it was just something to do to have a good time. And, I kind of had the mentality that I worked hard and played hard. But this was just, the way that it was. And I found myself, going to work, coming home, and then not leaving the house and just staying home and not doing much in the evening times and just drinking until I would pass out on a daily basis. And this led to a lot of problems and a lot of blackouts and a lot of disruption in the household and disruption with my employer, and my marriage, was dissolved directly because of, things that I did while I was drinking. And it took for a spiral. And the legal system got involved. The judges weren't happy. Family wasn't happy, employers weren't happy, and everybody around me was, strongly encouraging me to make changes in my life that I was just not hearing it, and I really wanted people just to leave me alone and mind their own businesses. And I didn't have a problem; they had a problem, and I just wanted them to leave me out of it. And it escalated to a point where, I was estranged from my wife, and my career in the financial services industry was collapsing. And I ended up going to rehab to try to get everybody off my back. And that was an interesting experience. I got kicked out. Of rehab, believe it or not. And the thing about rehab was that largely, I had not experienced anything other than drinking. And this now, I was like, there was a world of other things out there. Between going to meetings and going to rehab, I came to the understanding that there were other things out there other types of drugs and things that, didn't have hangovers. Oh, what is that? I after that, I did stay sober for a period of a year. And then after a year, I relapsed. And during that relapse, I didn't really want to spin back into drinking every day and blackouts. And so I experimented with all the drugs, all of them. And, none of them really gave me the satisfaction that alcohol did, frankly. I think I tried everything, almost everything anyways. And really my true passion and love was alcohol. And I just liked the feeling that it gave me, that feeling. That's the only way I could describe it, is that it's just like relief and oblivion. It got dark. The people around me got dark. It got to be where I was, not really making a living. I had obligations. I was, just basically, trying to maintain and get through life, as intoxicated as possible, and trying to find employment in some sort of field where I didn't have to be accountable. I was just trying to coast by, if you will, and get mine. And I was just basically, working to stay intoxicated in some way or another. And this led to other legal problems, and it was pretty insane. Now, when I think back at it, I got in trouble. The judge said, go to rehab or go to jail for 45 days. And, so I went to rehab for a second time, just under the premise of, I didn't want to go to jail, right? I don't really fit in there, I don't think. Well, who does, right? Who wants to go to jail, obviously? So rehab seemed like a better option. So I went to rehab for 90 days. On the 89th day, I relapsed, because I really just was out of control in a spiral. And I didn't get caught, but, who does that? Who goes to rehab under the threat of, not having to go to jail and then taking chances inside of rehab? Where I was one day away. I just had to make it one more day and get my certificate. If I would have gotten caught, I would have had to gone to jail. And things got really dark. I was barely functioning. I remember going to the emergency room because I was bleeding internally, and it was coming out in my bowel movements, and I was worried about that, and I was throwing up blood all the time, and I was having extended periods of blacking out. I was trying to manage my drinking by taking large doses of Xanax that I got from a doctor, which is a terrible combination, and that was a lot of blackouts as well with Xanax. And going to the emergency room because of this, and they're like, what do I got to do? And they're just like, well, you just have to stop drinking. We think you have alcoholic gastritis, and how do I fix this problem? And they're like, stop drinking. I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Do you have a pill for that? And I drank on the way home from the emergency room, and it just got to this weird place where, instead of being this, this stockbroker driving nice cars, being interviewed by the newspaper, and fancy lunches, and having a house and a family, I'm now just kind of, living in this little room. I rented a casita from a lady. I was just living in this little tiny room by myself, and staring at the ceiling, and it got very, very dark. And I think it got to a place where for 45 days straight, I stared up at the ceiling fan, wondering if it could support my weight, and if I was going to hang myself. I really wanted to end it. Like, it was like I felt like I had gotten into a hole. I had been arrested for dumb stuff. My ability to have a license as a Financial advisor was not going to happen anymore. I was having to seek employment on other things, and it just was like I didn't feel like I was ever going to be able to dig out of a hole. And I've been to rehab 2 times before. I just didn't think that was going to work for me. And something happened in that 45-day period. And I don't know what it was. And I have a hard time talking about it because I don't find myself to be a religious person, nor I don't find myself to be a spiritual person overall. I think I am today. But back then, like it didn't really make sense to me. I suppose it was some sort of psychosis or delusion where I was lying in, intoxicated, heavily intoxicated, and I felt the warmth, the presence of God. I have no idea, an angel, and they reached their hand out to me, left hand, and said, "I've always been here. All you had to do is ask for help." And I said, "Yes, please help me. I don't know what to do anymore. This is the end." I was in debt over 6 figures, and I'm on probation, and I didn't have meaningful employment, and I was intoxicated always. And whether it was alcohol or Xanax or weed, I was just always on something. And I don't know, something was lifted. I was like, okay, this is it. Like I've got nothing to lose. I'll try rehab one more time. And I did go to rehab for a 3rd time. I was severely underweight, probably weighed 30 pounds less than I weigh now. I had a very long detox. The rehab was worried that I was going to have seizures. In fact, when I called them and said that I need help, I need to get sober, and they knew who I was because I'd gone there twice before, and they encouraged me to not stop drinking and taking Xanax because they were worried about me having a seizure, and I had an 18-day detox, and I shook a lot of it, and I slept for the first 3 days I was there, and I had bed sores from sleeping, and it was interesting. Like I was physically unwell, and I really felt lost. Like I didn't know if how I was going to function in society. I didn't know how I was going to make a living. I didn't know how I was going to meet my obligations. I didn't know how I was going to, function, with the debt that I had accrued, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to find meaningful employment or how I was going to function. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to stay sober. And I just kind of felt like I gave up. Like I was like, well, I don't know what to do. We'll see if this works. And I'm grateful that I didn't run, and there were a lot of opportunities for me to run, and I had a lot of situations that it could have gone a different way, but I moved in one foot in front of the other, and it was a struggle. And I remember getting out of rehab and moving into a sober living, which was kind of humiliating in a lot of ways, that I had been reduced to that. And I did that, and I just kind of put one foot in front of the other, and I just trusted the process. I was going to meetings. I was trying to help other people, whatever that means. And I just knew that if I just did one thing in moving forward in my life, that would be better. And I just focused on helping myself by helping other people. Helping other people seemed to be what made me feel good. It was a good feeling working with other people, and I related. I felt like I had found a home. And I also really had struggled with the spiritual side of that. And now, for some reason, it just wasn't an obstacle anymore. I think that I had been reduced to nothing from my experience for me to have an opinion on whether spirituality works or doesn't work no longer was of any importance. Like, who am I to say it doesn't work when everybody else is telling me it does work? Like, my opinion was invalid. I have no, who am I? This borderline homeless guy with nothing, scumbag. You know what I mean? Just who am I to dispute whether or not this idea of having some sort of spiritual path forward works or doesn't work? This wasn't a realistic question. It didn't matter anymore. And, I have a healthy amount of skepticism, and I think that's fine. And I think everybody else should, but I just trusted the process, and it worked out for me. And, I found my way. I ended up taking a job in a sober living, and I was a house manager for a sober living, because that was really the only kind of, meaningful employment that I could have at the time. And frankly, the salary for that job is equivalent to the amount that I would make in one day is what I would make there in a month. But at the time, and today, is what I'm making about a day. And it was a good place for me to, not only help other people and keep my sanity together, but it also gave me the time to start working on YouTube. And at the time, before I started doing YouTube, a girl I was seeing at the time, and I was unemployed and I was getting unemployment checks. And she says, do what you love and the money will follow. And what do you love? And I said, well, and I kind of sarcastically said to her, I like helping people, and I like playing video games. And she's like, isn't that what PewDiePie does? I'm like, oh, okay. And I looked into PewDiePie, and then there was another YouTuber making videos about a mobile game that I was playing. I was playing Marvel Contest of Champions, and there was a YouTuber by the name of W Bang, and I thought, I could do that. And so I started doing that. And, one thing led to another, one foot in front of the other. I found that I could stay sober, and things did get better. And I'm glad that I did ask for help, and I'm glad that I did go to rehab, and I'm glad that I put aside all of my preconceived ideas about going to rehab. And I'm glad that I just stayed still long enough and put one foot in front of the other long enough, even though a lot of my problems seemed bigger than life, and things got better and better, specifically when I wasn't poisoning myself daily. Things got better. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is I'm glad, I'm very blessed to be where I am today. I hope that if you're struggling, you can set aside any ideas that you have about any kind of process. I suggest to definitely do whatever works for you, and just to seek help, whether that is, if you have access to treatment, go to treatment. Meetings are free, and I feel like I got the most help out of those.